got some pieces that were offcuts from Christmas trees, and what I'm wanting to do is to create sort of pieces that are roughly the size of my hand. It's an awful lot easier if you actually look on the back side of the branch, and then it becomes fairly obvious what to cut. So this section here, probably a nice big chunky section, that will do for me. If I look at this section here, I can possibly cut that section off, and then maybe a couple more sections on the way down, some slightly smaller, some slightly chunkier. I don't need to use all of this, and I might save some of these little bits for fillers a little bit later on. So that would probably be no use to me at the moment, but I might use these. As I say, what I'm looking for is a load of these pieces, and depending on the size of your wreath will depend on how many pieces you need, but roughly for a 10-inch wreath I have used approximately 4 pieces from the bottom of a Christmas tree. I've pre-made my wreath ring base using 2 8-foot stout withies. I've used the video for the wreath ring / circlet to make that. I've also got some reel wire here. I'm using florist reel wire, but you could quite happily use string if you wanted a completely eco-friendly wreath. All I'm going to do to start off with is I'm going to wrap it round a couple of times just to secure it, and I'm going to twist it together. I'm going to leave this little bit sticking out so that I've got something to hang up later. I'm going to take each piece in turn, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to wrap twice round it. Now you could quite easily, if you've got good hands, you can hold 2 at once and double wrap. We're working anti-clockwise and we're binding anti-clockwise, but we're laying them down to the right. You can work the other way so long as you work the same way all the way around. So the double wrapping, once round and then move down a little bit and wrap again. So I've wrapped just here and just here. If I only wrap once, it will pivot, so 2 wraps secures it in place. I'm going to work round, moving slightly down each time I wrap, and put a couple of pieces, one on the outside, one on the inside. And when I'm wrapping, I don't want to crush all of this, so I want to actually look and work out where is best to sort of wiggle my wire into, and then wiggle my wire in, and I'm trying to keep a little bit of tension on there as I go, so you can see me pulling it too. Now it doesn't matter at this stage if you miss out bits or you've got little bald bits. That's absolutely perfect, because we're going to add some other bits in later. We're just looking at trying to cover sort of the inside and the outside as we move around. So again, another one here, pull tight, and another one a little bit further round. And I'm going to go round and I'm going to do that to all of my wreath ring. coming up towards the end of my wreath ring now, and I've still got this bald bit under here that I need to fill in. All I'm going to do is carry on in the same way, but I'm going to lift these so that I can actually slot and fit things underneath here. So rather than working on top, I'm going to tuck in and underneath. Exactly the same format, a couple at a time. It looks a little bit messy and it's really sort of quite hard to see what's going off in here. But you will see that bald spot if you pull everything back, and then you can fill in with the appropriate amount of foliage just to finish off. And it should take you back round to your beginning, and if you turn over you should be able to locate that piece of wire from the beginning. I'm going to then cut that, and I'm going to twist these two pieces of wire together just to secure. Now that will give me a hanger. I could replace that with ribbon if I wanted to. I could actually tuck this into and through the weave, so I'm going down around those wraps just to get rid of the wire ends. I'm now going to have a look at my wreath, and I'm going to determine if there are any spots that I feel I want some more foliage in, or any spots where there's too much foliage. So I'm looking at the middle and it feels a little bit chaotic in there. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is to cut out some of the middle sections just to give it a bit of breathing space. Some of these are quite hefty, so we'll just trim back a little bit. And the best thing is always to get it hung up and have a look at it from a few different angles and see what works and what looks right. So this looks a little bit bald up here. I'm quite happy with this, but don't forget that we're going to add some adornments in here as well. So it doesn't have to be completely full to begin with, but here we definitely need to put something in. So what I've done is I've got some pieces all prepared, and they're just the end offcuts, and I've stripped back the needles to make a nice clean stem. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those, I'm going to shove those in to the wires that are underneath. So I'm digging and looking round for those wires and adding pieces in. And you can add in holly at this stage, you can add in other greenery, you could even wrap all the way around with ivy. But wrap and push in as many pieces as you feel you need to, and have a look from not only the top but also from the sides and from the inside to see what needs to be finished off a bit more. Now I think that's a really nice shape, but I'm slightly conscious here I've got some long bits, so again I'm going to come back and trim off the bits that are offending me. Another little trick is that if you feel that any of this back is slightly saggy, you can take another withy or a little piece of your pine, and you can tighten and tension it by pushing these into the gaps, so they will tighten and tension the wires. So if you feel like any part of this is slightly slipping, use a few of these packers on the back side of things. You'll also notice here that when I made this wreath ring it was slightly kinky, but it's not mattered at all, it's not affected the finished wreath. So that's our wreath all based up with foliage and ready for the next stage for decoration. So I'm next going to look at my decorative elements, and I've chosen pine cones, lotus flower heads and orange segments. Again, I'm going to use real wire, but you could happily use string without any problems at all, but I like using real wire. I find it holds very easily, and I can take them off when I compost my wreath a little bit later on in the year, and I can reuse them year after year. So all I'm going to do is to look at the pine cone and go round the bottom end of the pine cone, and I'm roughly halfway with my real wire, and then when I get to the end I'm just going to twist it round so it's held and it's got two legs on it. With my lotus heads, they are lovely and soft at the back end, so you can push through quite easily, and I tend to do a little clump of 2 or 3 together, and you can sort of nestle those again halfway and all I'm going to do is twist again to give me those all important legs. And then with your orange peel, if these are freshly done, this works really easily. If they're not fresh, they take a little bit of pushing through, but you're looking to push through just on one edge and feed a number of them all onto your reel wire at once. And 3 to 5 works nicely. Again, it depends on the size of your wreath. If you were doing string for this, you might need to use your bodkin to just get in there a little bit and give it a little bit of a hole. And as I'm not looking, they're popping off the other end, but it's not a problem. We can just thread them straight back on. And I think I'll put maybe 5 in this particular section. This time I will keep hold of the other end though. And this one's fighting a little bit. That's 4. And one last one is 5. And all I've done to dry these off is I'm lucky enough to have an Arga at home. So these have gone in the bottom oven of the Arga. And again, I am just twizzling those together, and you'll see they clump up. And as I twist them, they will naturally fan out into a little clump. So I'm going to do a few of those as well to pop on. So back to my wreath now. I've got all my little bits that I want to put on it, and what I want to do is just start designing. So I'm just going to place and lay on where I think I want them to go. Now if this is a very formal wreath, you might want to do things in groups of 3s. You might want to gather just all down in the bottom of a wreath and put your decorations all together, or you might want to just go a little bit random. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort just thinking about how I want everything. You might want to take a photograph on your phone of your design, or you might be one of those people that just wants to go for it and see how it looks. So plan out what's what. You don't want too much in there, and nestling a couple together looks quite nice as well. So decide what you want to do before we move on to the next stage, which is actually attaching these. So it's exactly the same principle for attaching everything. I've just got a pine cone here, and I've decided that I'm going to put this pine cone here. Now what I want to think about is not flattening everything. I want to nestle, so I'm lifting up and I'm looking and nestling it underneath, and I'm trying to get really in there so I can actually work back to the ring. So I'm really digging round. I've found the ring, I've got my wire, and I'm going to turn over, trying to keep hold of my wire so I don't lose it, and it's here. So I've got my 2 legs, and I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to twist them with the legs wide apart. If the legs are together and you twist, it doesn't actually tighten, but if you separate them, it tightens up, and we can twist that on, and then that is secure. And you can move and you can change these with them being on wire, and then you can look to add in your next one. So I think I'm going to have a little group of 2 and maybe nestle that one in there. So again, same principle, tuck it in, look around the back, take those 2 legs, twist them together, and I'm going to do that for all of my elements that I'm going to have onto my wreath. My next job is going to be to create some sort of ribbon. It's entirely up to you how you decorate and whether you have a ribbon or a hanger, but I quite like the natural sort of look. So I'm going to cut off a little piece of Hessian ribbon, and I'm going to fold it in such a way that it's going to create a bow. So I'm finding the middle, and then from the middle I'm creating a loop, and the other side I'm creating a loop, so it goes into a rough shape of a bow. I might need to adjust that because one leg's a little bit longer than the other, so we'll just have another go and you've got another opportunity to have a watch. So that one into the middle and that one into the middle, and they're a little bit more balanced. So what I'm now going to do is that middle section I'm going to gather together, put my bind wire around again, and on the back side of it, making sure that the legs are both the same size. I'm going to bind that really, really tightly and put some twists on so it really tightens up in the center. And there I've got the makings of my bow. It doesn't look much at the moment, but trust me, when you actually get it onto your wreath, it will go into more of a bow shape. So I've decided where I want my bow to go, and I'm going to attach it in exactly the same way that I've done things before. I'm going to nestle and try and get it as far in as I can. A leg on one side, a leg on the other. Turn it over, locate the two together and tie these as tightly as I can by twisting. And then I'm going to concentrate back on the front edge and making this bow look a little bit sexier. So I'm going to move it about a little bit so that the hessian rearranges itself into more of the wings of the bow. And then I'm going to trim these bottoms. So you can either trim in one of two ways. So you can trim on a nice angle to get an angular finish, or you can fold them in half, and if you cut them the right way, so cut them from the open side diagonally to the inside, you will get a really nice finish like that. So the choice is yours. I quite like this finish, so I think I'm going to do the same with this one. If you cut it the wrong way, you will end up with a point, which is not what we want. So have a quick think before you commit to the cut, to cutting it the right way. And you can cut them the same size or one slightly shorter than the other. It's entirely up to you as to which you would prefer. So there we have our bow all set down in the bottom. So I'm going to use some more hessian ribbon to make a hanger for this. I think I've got a little bit of room here, and I've worked out, looking at the front, that that's roughly where I want to attach it to. So I'm just going to use my scissors to help me to poke the hessian through. And it's quite nice that it's tight. It means it's nice and secure. And just to whatever determined length you think you want, and then pop a knot into the end of there. It's quite a nice chunky ribbon, this one, so we'll get a nice chunky knot at the top. And then again, you can apply some sort of decorative cut to the top. I'll do the alternative cut on this one, and then we can just pull it so we get to a point where we have an appropriate length of hanger for our wreath.